I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today we are in session number 7 of ABAP on HANA. So let's just go through the agenda for today's session of what we are going to learn. So as a part of today's session, we are planning to go through first, definitely the quick recap of what we did in the earlier session. Post that, we would be continuing our discussion with the another well-known component of a CDS view called DML, data manipulation language. So till now, what we just identified that we can have a view which would give us a data while writing any sort of defined view and all the syntax, it generates a view in the backend. So that is a data definition language. We also learn how I can have a access control mechanism also applied on a CDS view using DCL. Now it comes the DML part, that how I can have a data manipulation, how I can ask the system to manipulate the data, or you can say how I can enable the system so that it can manipulate the data. That is something we would be learning. Then we would be seeing how we can segregate the business logic and UI designing, because that is something we would be learning. And as a part of that, we would be learning the metadata extension. Then comes the portion of embedded analytics, as a part of which we would be learning virtual data model. So virtual data model helps us separate out, or I can say segregate the views depending on its usability, whether a particular view is meant for interfacing or its actual consumption of the uh, Fiori applications. That is something we would be deciding, and based on that, we would be defining multiple views. And we would also be learning multiple ways of defining value helps. Okay, so let's just quickly go into the system to see the portion that we learned earlier. Okay, so it's a part of yesterday's session. We started with something called DCL, the access control. And while learning access control, we learned that we can have multiple ways with the help of which I can imply access control so that only authorized person can see the relevant information. So we have a literal level uh, authentication, access control at literal level. So how I can navigate to the access control view, that's also we learn. What is a way? I can say I would be depending on the dependency analyzer and then figuring out what is the view that would help me with the access control. I can say open with dependency analyzer. Here, if you see, we do have access control defined, and we would be saying open others, and once we say navigate to that access control view, it would open that access control view. So here we granted this particular view select privilege for all the relevant data where either the company code is default. So this is something we can call literal level authentication. This is aspect user base. This is aspect PFCG authorization based. And we define that, okay, if a user is having this particular authorization object assigned and he is having authorization for doing the change or display activity, then he should be able to find the data, as a part of which we learn the access control. As you can see, we don't have any sort of error condition, but still the data would get filtered based on the access. Suppose that we learn multiple ways of linking entities. Join is definitely one of them that we are usually using regularly. But due to its certain limitation, SAP come up with very important feature called association. So this is something that you would be finding very regularly used whenever you are working with CDS. So here we do have a principal entity and its dependent entities. The principal entities information or the columns that we would be projecting as a part of the selection list would become part of the dollar projection. For example, EBL and BU, KRS and all these four fields. On top of the dependent entity, we would be building a association, which would only expose the associated data with reference to the principal entity. And as you can see, we are also exposing the association, so we can also navigate to the child level information. As a part of which we also define we can say a view, or I can say the application which gives us the pure hierarchical level data. Then we also define the company code level dashboard. So here my first entry page would be company code, and then the purchase order data would follow. Next thing that we see over here is the SQL functions. We learn that we have multiple built-in function as a part of a CDS. So we learn how we can generate the condition column with and without pilot variable. Numeric functions are also there with the help of which we can perform numeric operations, the string manipulation. Very important, something which we don't have at NeoWeb's level as well is called unit conversion and the currency conversion functions. Okay, using which earlier headache of having the currency conversion and unit conversion and function module base, or I can say application server level base, can be reduced. Now, after having all this thing, let's just see how I can have additional functionality of uh, having create, update, delete also enabled. Let's just start with something that we already know. So let's just say we all know that we can have the view. If I am creating a view, if I am selecting the data, and if I am exposing it as an OData service, then that particular view would become part of the world outside. And I can perform my normal get operation, query operation. I can pass the filters and everything, and that would work automatically. For example, let me take an example where I can manipulate the data, and it also at the same time also system should not also get hampered. For example, I do have this table YE0 T01. If you see, I have set of information over here. Now, what I would be doing is I would be building a CDS view on top of this. I can say I want to build the simple thing, the data definition, the one we already know, because we have created now many a CDS views at our own. I can say we are creating the base view for DML operation. And I am defining a view. Now I want to create a SQL view on top of that because it's a mandatory step. Data source I want to make for this particular example, or I can say if I do have ZEKKO as well, let me just check that as well. Yeah, I can use this as well. It has good amount of records. So I can say ZEKKO. Let it be my table for this particular example. The fields which I would like over here is, so I have all the fields which I was interested in. So I just expose those. How I did that? I just say control space, insert all element, and all of those become part of my selection view. The moment I say activate over here, and I just say execute, my ABAP application would start showing me the list of data. It's very straightforward, nothing rocket science into that. Now, if I go one more step further, then I would be exposing this my particular information as an OData service. Because I don't want to be at view level, because that is something my user cannot view ideally. Instead, I am just willing to expose the information so it can be usable to the world outside. I can say PO data set. Now, after having this, all we know is that this view which we do have can also be configured as an OData service. So I have to register that, because before registering that, I won't be able to use any sort of the information. So it's not currently here. Let's just try adding the service. let me just see the kind of information this particular view is, or I can say this service is giving me. So it is giving me the PO data set over here. Just say enter. And I do have all the required information. So I am able to see all the sort of data. So which is very good. It means I am able to perform. In earlier session, we also learned the basic skeleton of REST API. As a part of it, you would be knowing when I say a REST API, it would be performing all the CRUD queue operation. So which operation did we just perform? We perform the query operation. We just try fetching the data by querying the information. Okay. Now, next thing we are interested in over here is, let's just say I want a particular information. For example, I want all the records where my company code is DB01. So I'll just say question mark dollar BUKRS equal to, sorry, question mark dollar filter equal to BUKRS EQ, and I am getting all the relevant record which are from that dedicated company code. If I want to go one more step further, I can say I want only the record which is available over here with this particular primary key. So I'm passing a primary key, and when I'm passing a primary key, which call should get triggered? It should trigger the R call from the CRUD queue, CRUD queue. So it's a read call because we are reading only one record. So we have this information. Now let's just say due to some reason I want to change the set of informations available. Okay. For example, I want to say I am willing to update this record. Okay, because when I say I am able to perform the operation which a REST API REST API supports ideally the create, read, update, delete, and query. Query operation we did because we queried all the data, we queried the data with filter. We also performed the read operation because read is also we can perform using primary key. That's what also we did. Let's just try something called update. Okay. So when I say I want to update, what an update parameter would require? We had discussed this as well. So update parameter would need a primary key to uniquely identify a record. The full payload, I can say use as a request and a put call. Now, as a part of put call, we would be sending the updated information, the information that we are updating. So for example, I want to update this to ABAP, or I can say S4 ABAP 22. Okay. And now I am saying execute this operation. What I am getting over here is that updating operations are disabled for the entity. But we would say, okay, I have not disabled any sort of operations, right? It says there is an exception called entity CUD is disabled. So CUD operation, the create, update, delete operations are disabled, or I can say by default it would be disabled, but we are yet to enable those. That is the meaning of a create, update, delete is still disabled. Okay. Now, to have a more clear visual, let us just try performing a operation if we can, because I just tried checking in this morning because I just changed my device, so certain setup for Fiori application development was not properly done. Let me see when if we can also go with the bit of a UI generation, so we would also be able to easily visualize on how we can consume this OData service and all. So what we would be doing over here is we would be going to the VS Code, the Visual Studio Code. Okay. And as a part of Visual Studio Code, I can say I want to go to command palette, and here I do have a Fiori application generator. So as a part of which what I have done is actually I do have a Visual Studio Code. So this is not part of a Web on HANA course. Okay, this is fully a Fiori elements course, but I am just we are just going a bit into that so that you can also visualize, because I just understood that like some of you might not have worked on a screen other than the SAP GUI, and that's why it might create some sort of confusion of So how application and all everything would be consuming this. So we have a Fiori guided development, the extension pack application modeler. This is something a kind of an extension that you can install. And here let's just say I want to generate a list report, because list report is for displaying a list of information. What I want to do is I want to connect to a, let's just say, an OData service. I have to give the URL for the service. So how can I derive the URL for the service? I can say call this service in the browser. So here I am getting that particular service. Just say copy this information from here. Okay. It would ask me to provide the name of the service. So for example, okay, service username and password. So I'll just say my user ID, and I would also pass my password. Because this is a system in which I am connecting, it is a sandbox system, so I don't have a single sign-on and everything enabled. So I'm just going step by step, other way around. Here we do have a PO data set, right? That is what we named it as, and that is what system also identified that okay, this is the PO data set on which you are trying to perform the operation. You would say yes. Next, we can give our project a name called ZBM22. Let's just say list report. PO dashboard. Let's just say the name. Okay. Next, let's just say we don't want any sort of deployment configuration. FLP, do we need? I don't think so. Okay. We have this information. Module name cannot be in capital. So let's just say all the setup is something that I removed due to some overloading of the data. So it's okay. Anyway, let's just see how it all goes. So the system would be generating the application for you. Okay. So if you see, when you are going with this particular setup, it would try consuming your whole OData service using the authentication information you provided. It would try reading the service metadata, okay, and would try to generate a basic UI. And that is why it is called Fiori element. Here, if you see, I have not done any sort of UI development as such manually, but instead I just followed some sort of path and provided my OData service to that. And my OData service does have its all the information as a part of the service metadata. It might take some time because it's a first time in I guess after quite a long time it is trying to generate and install. That's why there are a huge amount of update it is working on. It is installing all dependency. The configuration has saved. It has generated something. So we do have this. Application, and used to be something called workspace. Where are we? It is hosting my application a bit, and it is opening a browser. What is the issue? Why the system is not recognizing it? Actually, there is some issue with the local web IDE, otherwise it would automatically take this information. Okay, one second. It is taking Z sample. Okay, it is connecting to the wrong one, and that is why. 1 second. Okay. Just say what is the path of this? Mm-mm. Just connecting to this only. Just a moment. Let's see if it works for us. Yeah, here it is prompting us for the user ID and password. Now we do have the application. So if you see, system just generated a blank application for us because we have not given anything. But if you see, there is this personalization. The moment you click on that, you would find all the columns. If you say OK, and if you just say go, you would find all the set of data available over here. Okay, so this set of information that we were ultimately getting on the gateway client over there, yeah, somewhere over here. The same set of information now we are able to generate via a Fiori application. Okay, just got timed out. Let me just re-log in. Okay, so in this particular case, if you see, we are having a set of data, and the same set of data the system is also doing fetching. How the system is doing that ideally? So if you see what would ideally happen, that's what we were actually talking about all this while. When I say my system would say go, the system would ultimately do nothing but it would trigger a backend call. That is something that you would be able to find on the network tab. You can say go over here, system would trigger a backend call, and that backend call you would be able to find over here somewhere in the dollar batch. In the payload section, if you see what system is doing, it is triggering a call to PO data set. Okay, like we did. It is saying give me the first 20 record with the skip and top, and it is selecting the set of columns that we selected over here. Okay, and it is also getting the count. So the same backend call, if you try triggering from your side, it should give you a data. If this particular call is failing, then the application won't also work. Okay, so it is saying, okay, there are total 89 records system is having, and out of which it is returning only 20 out of that, and the system on the UI is able to bind those as well. Okay, that is why we do have a gateway client. So these are kind of a query parameter that we can expect. Okay, so when we say these are query parameter that we can expect, the moment I can say open this particular object page. Okay, if you see what is the backend call it is triggering, it is saying PO data set along within a single inverted comma the primary key of that. So it is trying to navigate to the another component. If I try to filter down the information, if I say add a filter and I want to filter based on a what we do have company code is something, yeah, the very first company code, I can say okay. I'll be finding the filter over here. I can say give me only the information where company code is DV01. The moment you say enter, you would find that a batch call again would get triggered, and that call, sorry, that call would ultimately, if you see over here, is saying the PO data set, skip and top, and here we what we do have, it says dollar filter BUKRS equal to DV01. So this all the space are converted to percentage 20. That's why you are seeing it like this. But ultimately, the system is also trying to trigger the backend call as we were trying, because the Fiori elements also is also calling our backend service, which is a REST API base. Here also we were triggering, or we can say we were learning the REST API services. So the backend calls, signatures, and everything would be the similar, and that's why the response that we can expect, that system is responding with, let's just say, 3 records over here. So this is nothing but the response that we are getting over here with after a filter. And if I say I don't have a filter, then I am getting 89 records. So same 89 result which we are getting over here, same thing we would get when we are calling it from the application. Now, does it make a bit of a clear picture?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, okay, great. Now, if you see over here, this is still a kind of a UI application. So definitely a UI developer would be able to enhance this, because many things would be there which you cannot achieve via annotation. Certain things are there which we can achieve. Let's just try, let's just have this application open. Okay, what we are willing to have over here is, let's just move ahead a step a bit. Here we were earlier getting that the create, update, delete functionality is something that was not possible. Okay, now we want to enable that functionality. What we tried doing earlier was, we tried using this information, we use it as a request. and we tried updating something over here. Now it was saying this is not possible. I was saying execute and it is giving me error. To enable the create, update, delete functionality, we have to go with a object model annotation. So we have learned many I can say many namespaces for the annotations. One of those and very important one over here is the object model based annotation. When I say object model base, that would be the namespace, and I'll just say @object model. And here in the object model, what we would be defining or what we would be specifying is, say, we would be defining the list of annotation, those would be of our interest. So we have multiple ways, like we have over here in the ABAP catalog, I have 3 annotations. So I'll just say, okay, @ABAP catalog, and then I can specify it individually, or I can also have all of them combined in a curly bracket. Now, create update functionality is given in the CDS view with the combination of CDS plus BOPF object, the business object processing framework. Now, when that BOPF comes into picture, that BOPF default implementation would be something that the system would give, and that BOPF would be responsible for all the operations those are being performed on that particular service. So here we have to define something called model categories, that what sort of processing model you want to be here. And if you see, say, control space, here you would find only one business object, because currently with SAP there is only one model category called business object for this particular DML operation. Then we would be defining that I want all the create, update, delete mechanism to be enabled. So I'll just say create enable true. I'll also want the update mechanism also to be enabled. I'll just say true over here. Delete mechanism I also want to be enabled. So I'll just say true. Next, when I say I am performing create, update, delete, I need a place where after that create, update, delete operation, I would be writing down my data. When I say a new entry is getting created, where should the system write the new record? Where the new updated information should be stored, and when a delete request is getting triggered, from where the data should get deleted. For that, we have write active persistence, and here we would be specifying the name of the table where actually that information would be stored. So I can say ZEKQ over here. Okay. Now, when I say this particular write active persistence, we have specified, okay, this table is somewhere where the actual data would be processed. For the data to be processed, we have to enable the capability of this application to as a transactional application, because the transactions are going to be happened over here. That's why we are saying transactional processing capability enabled equal to true. Next thing over here is we want that the amount of data that would be transacted, okay, that should also be in a minimal size. So when I say I am performing a create operation, or I can say in this case in this case I am saying I want to perform an update. How many records I can update in a single go? I can say one record. When I say I am with a batch call, I can expect a one purchase order with the 1,000 records. So likewise, we would have some sort of operations, or we can say some sort of number of amount of record that we would be processing. And for that, we do have something called a result set dot size category. So we would be defining size category over here. In this size category, what you would find is, like we have in case of a technical setting size category, same way we also do have over here. Here, the amount of record that would get processed, mostly in case of a BOPF based processing, it would be less than 100. It would be mostly 1-to-1. If you say batch call, in the batch call, you might find 100 different post call triggered, but one particular post call would only be interacting with one particular line of record. So that's all where we actually start. The extra small, the small size, or medium, L, extra large, or double XL. So it depends on amount of record that we can expect to be processed in a single backend call. Okay. So here we would be specifying the default one, XS. So after having all of this, model category, create, update, delete, enable, write, access processing, the transaction capability we have also enabled, and we have also enabled, or we can say we have also defined the size. Last but not the least, we have to define, let's just say there is a PO data of header, there is also a PO line item data, and afterwards I want that any sort of information, that is uh, I can say getting processed, the proper hierarchy should get followed. For example, when I say a purchase order header, then it would be set of header data, that would be root level information. Afterwards, when I say a line item information is there, PO line item, then definitely a separate view for PO line would be there. Both would be connected via association, but the route for execution, where actually the processing execution would occur, would be at header level. So that route is something what we can call it as a composition route. So this is the composition route, and here we can say save, and you can just say activate. So these are the things that would be required for you to enable the create, update, delete mechanism of a particular CDS based OData service. Okay. Now, if you see, this is taking a bit of time while activating. Okay. And now, as it gets activated, over here you would find one more sign which says the OData model transaction processing enabled has generated a business object. That business object that we are talking about over here is nothing but a BOPF. The moment you click on this, it navigates you to a business object. So this is the BOPF object that gets created, which is responsible for all the create, update, delete operation. If you want to open that, you can open this particular BOPF object in a transaction called BOBX, because we want also the capability of extending the same. If you say open, you can pass the name of that, say enter, and here you would find a full BOPF object getting generated. So business object processing framework, the BOPF is in itself a huge topic that definitely based on our interest we can learn. Okay, but just to see it as in a glance, okay, what SAP is actually generating, this has two component, node structure and node elements. Okay, this node structure and node element would give you the full information of, so this structure is a kind of an interface you can consider, or I can say skeleton of what would be the hierarchy for the processing. And here you would be getting the other actions that would get performed. For example, when I say before any sort of actual create is being done, it should determine the primary key. Okay, so it means before something is getting executed, you want to perform some sort of execution. Because when I say a query operation, are you writing any sort of code to perform a query operation? No, that system is doing. But if you want to intervene in between that, okay, standard query operation is getting performed, but before that, I want to perform something. Standard post operation is getting performed, but the key generation I want to take care of. Okay, some sort of saving is happening, but I want to insert some sort of admin information saying who is modifying the information, and likewise those all the things can be done in a determination, but these are part of a separate topic, SLP BOPF, that of course we won't be going through in detail. But yeah, this is responsible for all the create, update, delete. Now let's just try doing one thing. After having this BOPF object generated, let's just say I want to open the OData service where it was. Let's close this. We don't want that. Now let's just try opening the gateway client. I'm opening that service. This time I'll just let's just try loading the metadata. These are purchasing information, transformations and everything are supported. Let's just try deriving the information over here, saying PO data set, out of which what we are interested in over here, for example, this particular record. I want to use this as a request and perform some sort of update operation. I want to update this particular S4 ABAP 22, for example. And I'll just say execute. And now if you see, it is showing a green. And this green means that the update operation is successful. Now if I just try going over here at my database level, saying ZEKKO, here the created by we updated for this particular purchase order to S4 ABAP 22, which is a success. If I just try refreshing this application, meanwhile also try learning another record, another operation. Say let's just say I also want to perform the delete operation. Say I am clicking on delete, and for a delete operation, what we would need a primary key. So I can just say execute. This server is a bit of slow, it seems. That's why it's not responding. So if you see it is giving 204, it means delete operation is also successful. If I just go over here, say refresh, this record just got deleted. Okay, let's just have this application started, and let's just also try performing the operation that we actually left. So for example, I want a full payload, so I'll just get the initial information. I want to perform a post call now, so I'll just say use as a request. After using it as a request, I want to create a record, and as I am wanting to create a record, the request URI would contain only the entity set name. And for example, I want to create it with 45 all 0. The moment I say execute, it would create this record. So I can again see that my 88 record has now been converted to again 89 record, and the record which I just tried creating has now been created. Okay. So the CDS view, which was just I can say query and okay, which was just query and read enable is now create update delete enable. One more thing that you would find over here is in this application, if you can see earlier when we actually came, the create and delete button were not there. The moment you enable the create update delete, it's a service metadata which is building this application, and that is why the create and delete button also started appearing. Okay, and they are also in a working mode. So for example, if you want to say this dr record which is there, which is for purchasing document one number purchase order is something that you want to delete. It just deleted that object. If you just go over here and just say refresh, you would find the one number purchase order just got deleted. Same for the other operation, but for that we need some more sort of activity, because when I say create or I can say edit, it should prompt for, or I can say it should give a editing screen. Okay. So that is a kind of again a sort of UI development that we all need to learn, and I guess so that is a UI activity. But mainly from ABAP on HANA perspective, the capability of CDS, now you can see how versatile it is. This is something you can't expect from a SE11 view. You can't say I have a view and I would just give it to you. You just can register it however you want, and you would also get this capability or the application being generated in less than I can say less than an hour. That is not possible, but it is possible when you do have a CDS based OData service, or I can say CDS based view. Okay. So are we clear till now? On the DML functionality, we are still going ahead. We would try to learn more things as much as we can. But are we all clear till now? But one thing is must, the hands-on. That should be there. Okay. Okay, perfect. Now let's just move one more step ahead and learn onto something called a metadata extension. Okay. When I say a metadata extension, why it is required? Or let's just forget about the metadata extension. Let's just say I have this application. The very first time when I opened this application, what it was giving me? It was giving me, I can say initial screen over here. I can just say reload. Let me just rerun. It's like, as its local environment, it is bit uh, non-respondent. So it would respond in a time. But now when we actually just landed on the screen, initial screen, what we just found is we had just a set of buttons. We had a setting as a part of which we selected the columns. We added a filter that we were actually looking for. But do you think my actual user would also be happy doing that at its own? No, right? I mean, my user would not say, okay, I am okay. Just give me the training how I can select the columns, and I would be doing that on my own. No, that's not how a user ideally behaves. He would say, I want all the columns in this line, in this particular sequence. I want that one column first should be visible as a purchasing document, then company code, and I want this column. He might provide us a list. And for certain field, we also want a filters that you may give me the filter that I would be passing the filters value. and I can say set of information should get filtered out. Okay, that is what he would be saying. Now, if that is what the user would be saying, does CDS has any capability for handling those UI requests, that how the UI would be looking alike, or I can say the initial preparation of the UI application? Can a CDS help out us in that particular activity? So CDS has already shown you many a things, the object model, O data, and many things you have seen as a part of its capability. Everything and anything is coming via annotation libraries. Same way, we do have one more annotation library. That annotation library, we can consider it as a @UI annotation. You can say @UI. This @UI annotation library that we do have does have the list of annotation that would help you out designing the UI application from the CDS view itself. Okay. Not everything can be achieved as you can achieve it on the custom UI application, because it's a kind of a built-in functions, it has its certain limitation. What all has been built as an annotation, you can use that. Okay. For example, let's just start with over here. Let's just say my user is saying I want a filter to be visible automatically on a company code. A filter is called in a SAP, be it a SAP GUI or be it a SAP Fiori, all what we are calling it as a selections, select options and everything, something that we were writing. It's called UI dot selection field. When you are specifying this, you have to specify the relative positions, that you do have a kind of a position which says that this would be the first one that should be visible. Afterward, let's just say someone is saying, okay, that's okay that you are showing it first, but now I want one more field which is just showing before that, because that is more important to me. That is why SAP is giving you the gap of 10. It always say whenever you are designing a application, always give the position in a multiple of 10. So I am saying, okay, my selection field, this would be I can say position 10. Then let's just say I want also a filter on the vendor, so it should be at position 20, so that going forward, if anything new comes up, that I also want a filter of non-document type, and that should be there in between these two, then you can write 15. Those 15 would be again start appearing in between those, because if I short the selection field ascending, that would occur at the second position. If you see, I just say activate and it just got activated. Let me just rerun. Ideally, it should not be rerun, but currently there is some issue with the VS Code, and that's why it's troubling a bit. I'll just say run again. So if you see, by default, these two fields just started appearing in the selection field, because we specified it as a UI.selection field over here. Let's just move one more step forward. Let's just say after the selection field, I also want that a kind of columns which are not visible over here. I want certain columns also to be visible by default. For example, I want my purchasing document number EBLN to be there in my list. So I can say @UI dot line item, and here I can specify again position as a 10. So that would be my first one. For example, I want also company code to be visible, but I again don't want to write this whole thing. Okay. So what you can again do is you can say in the UI library, I have two annotation and I want both of those to be applied on this particular single column. So you can say line item, and here you can specify position as a 10, or sorry, position as a 20, because now the line item would be at second position. So if you see, we have a annotation at the field level. So these are field level annotation. Whenever you are writing something before a field, that would become a field level annotation. If you are writing something on top of a view, that would be a header level annotation. Okay, so these are field level annotation and these are header level annotation. Those would be applicable on whole view. So likewise, let's just say I want a few more columns also to be visible. For example, date of creation, the year name. Let's just say this Z term as well. Okay, and now I want this field to be first, this field to be second, I want this field to be third, this field to be fourth, likewise. Okay, and the moment I say activate, it would activate this view. And if I just try rerunning this particular application now, definitely showing it on an application level would help you visualize the things, something that you are not already knowing. If you had an idea on how actually OData service and everything that's architecture work, then definitely you would be able to easily visualize. But I think now it would be making a sense. Okay, why we do have all these things? What is the requirement? Right. Now, if you see, we have all the columns that we listed in the same sequence visible over here. Right. So we have all these columns started getting visible and we are able to see all those information. Correct. Now, next comes a part that I want to say search for example, Krish, a company code. The moment I say enter, it would filter down my data. But currently, there are plenty of records. Okay, I don't know how much they are in number. So I do have a kind of a @UI header info. I do have a type name which says what I am showing. So I can say purchase order. What I am saying so there are two annotation type user.header info has two information, a type name which says a singular name. When I say I am referring to only one purchase order, what I can call it as it says purchase order. When I am calling a purchase order in mass, what it is called as? It says purchase orders. Right. And if I just activate now, this is a bit of headache because the plugins are not working properly. Otherwise, after each change, it would ideally reload. But actually, it's a quite long time since I actually opened the VS Code. So it has many things that needs to be updated, and that's why it's behaving abnormally. But yeah, the best thing is that it is working. So that's a good thing. So the earlier annotation that we specified were field level annotation. This annotation that we specified, it is a header level annotation because it is applicable to whole bunch of application. Now here, if you just say go, you would be finding that I do have 88 records. The moment you say I have 88 records, if you filter it out, it would say, okay, you have 9 records for this particular company code. Now, each time the user won't be that friendly that it would say, okay, I am okay, I'll just scroll down my millions of record, I would mug up my company code which I'm interested in and I would just filter it out. No, that's not how a user is, right? A user ideally doesn't have I can say that easiness, because that's not how their life is. That ideally they ideally need some sort of helps in terms of application usage, and that's how actually an application should also be built. So for example, if I want to make this company code more user friendly in a SAP GUI, what I might have done is I might have given a value help. If I click over here, currently it does not give me any sort of suggestions. Instead, if I can make it in a way that it gives me a suggestion as well, then it would make the life of my user actually more easier, right? And that is why what we want over here is we want a way with the help of which I would be able to give the value help. Okay. I would be able to give the value help to my user that he can search for that particular company code's information that he is interested in. Okay. So what is a way how I can do that? So there are multiple ways. Let's just go with the very first one. I can say, let's just start with searching some sort of standard views. I was planning to show it you after the VDM, but let's just, as we are already at the application level, let's just take that portion first, then we would be coming up back to the VDM. So we want to give some sort of value help. So when I say I want to give a value help, what I would be doing is I want a data source. So earlier, let's just say when we were working in SAP ABAP, how we were giving a value help, we used to define some sort of search help and everything, and that search help we were actually consuming over here. Now what that search help was actually using, it was using the base view, or I can say base tables and something, and it was proposing the values. It means there should be some sort of intermediate views which can help us over here, and that particular help in I mean they can help us in a way that the value suggestion can be propagated with its possible value set. Okay, so for example, I want to, okay, let's just say if I want to give a value help, what I can give in a value help, I can say as a value help, I can use a full table. So for example, if I want to give a information of a company code that can be selected, I can say the company code that you are interested in, the company code which you are interested in can be, the company code that you are interested in can be coming from some master table called T001, because that is a master table. Or I can also expect some view built on top of this master table that can also help me over here, that okay, this there is a view built from this particular table, because this table can have 100 columns, but in a value help 100 columns are something which my user was not expecting. He is saying just give me the company code name, company code text, and one or two odd more things. Other than that, I'm not interested in other things. That's what he is saying. And in that particular case, what we can have over here is a more easier way of proposing a value help, because we would limit down the columns that we are actually planning to show. Okay, so not to make the things complex, let's just say I would just first show you one standard view. Okay, that particular standard view maybe we can use for building the value help, or we can also use this particular T001 table. So let's just say I want to search for some sort of standard views. Let me just give you the name. Currently it can be named as what it is called. For example, I underscore company code. That is a standard view that we do have. Okay, so we do have a particular company code view, okay, which you would be able to see over here. Okay, so we do have a company code view, and it is containing all its company code relevant information. right? So it is also getting the relevant information from T001 and its relevant table. So this is something that I'm interested in. So I'll just copy the name from here and I'll just say that for a particular purchase order record, I can expect a entry, okay, in my company code table that can only be minimum to maximum 1, and that is linked to this, and the name is which I am using over here is called company code. So I'm building an association. That is one of the optional way. Okay, let's just go first with more simpler way, that I want to give a value help. So for giving you a value help, there is also one more library. Okay, there are two ways of giving a value help. Let's just talk about the first one. For giving a value help, there is also one annotation library, like we do have @UI. Okay, same way we do have another library called @consumption. So on this BUKRS, I want to give one more library, so I'll just say okay, @consumption. Okay, so it is consume. It would say how the values of the proposal would be consumed, and here it does have value help definition. As a part of this value help definition, we have few more things. You have to define a particular entity, and this entity would have two more information called its relevant information of which particular entity you want to use as a value. So I want this I company code. So whatever set of data it does have, I want to use that. Okay. So I can say I want a name of the entity, or I can say CDS view that you would be using in a value help. So I can say it's a company code view. And when I say BUKRS, then of course my this particular I company code would have n number of fields. Then which field is something that would be relevant for this? So when I say I am passing, or I can say I am selecting the particular record, then what should be passed as an input to my this field BUKRS, because on which I am writing a value help. So that field is called here an element. The element you can get from here. So I can say it is a company code, that is a name of the field. I'll just say save and activate. Okay, I'll just say close this for now. So we do have this information. Now, if I want to search for example, Krish. If you see, the moment I start typing KRIS, it is searching it in all its column and it is proposing me the value. Unfortunately, the master data is not matching over here on this side. Okay, it's not searchable. If you just start searching over here, you would get okay whole filters. And I want to search for let's just say KRIS over here if it is here. Okay, that company code is not there in the list. That's why we are not getting it over here. Do we have DV01? Is also not there. Okay, so it is getting some sort of limited data. Okay. The table which I had generated was on an old set of data, which is now actually reloaded, it seems. Yeah. So the master data has actually been changed, and that is why we are not able to fetch the set of values over here. Let me just correct this a bit. So I can say, what did I have? Yeah, that happens ideally when you are creating some sort of test data and whole standard system is actually revamped. Then you won't be able to. Let's just change this information to via some sort of trick. I'm just updating the information just to prepare a right set of test data. So we can easily visualize what is actually happening. I have changed some sort of record by some sort of tag. Okay. Now, if someone starts searching for this 1710, they would be able to find it over here. If someone wants to search for, let's just say, LF01, they would also be able to find. And the moment they select this, just say go, we can expect it to get filtered. Okay. So, as it's a junk data, we might observe some sort of discrepancy. But on the functionality side, what the system is doing is it is generating a value help. It is saying these values would be consumed and you would be able to propose the values which are there in the I company code, and that values can be used for the filtering. So my user does not need to remember each and every information every time. Okay. So for example, when I say company code, not sure they have enabled the search help on that. They have not enabled. They have just enabled it on the code. Okay. So ultimately, when I say that I do have a set of information and I want to propose a value help, then value help can come from two sources. One source that we design over here is a separate view. This separate view is called a modeled view. We would be creating our own view as well in some time. So you would all be able to easily correlate as well. So this is a model view. It means it's a separate view and we are using this view to propose the values. Okay, so user does not need to mug up everything. Another way of specifying the same thing is, let's just say I do have a information of company code, the same thing, but I don't want to give a value help definition like this. What is the alternate way? So I can just say comment this out. And here we do have one more object model annotation. This object model annotation works on a base of a association. Okay. So if your set of information that you are exposing over here, for example, has an association, and this association would be containing all the company codes, because ultimately this association is being built on top of this view. So if we want to use this association to provide the value help, you can say @object model dot association. Okay. So this object model dot association, and this association can help you propose the value for all the exposed association. So you can expose this association from here. I just missed. Sorry, was a miss of one step. So it is object model, and there would be a foreign key relation, and there you can specify the list of association. For example, company code. So there are two ways with the help of which I can provide the value help. I can say value help association, or I can say value help definition of a consumption namespace, or I can say I can also go with the object model annotation. And as a part of which object model foreign key association would propose you all the list of associations that you have exposed, and you can use it as a value help. Okay. So there are these two ways of providing a value help. Now, next thing is, if you see where actually we did started, we started with writing our business logic. Okay, we started with writing our whole business logic over here by specifying, okay, what all information I want, what kind of operation it should allow, and everything. And we ended up over here by defining all the UI definition, that how a UI would work, of how what all fields should be visible, what all value help should actually be visible, where it should come from, and everything. This is just a beginning, and we are at the 70 line of code. Let's just say if you are working on a huge project where the application is expanding, how difficult it would be to manage the backend and UI things both at the same pace, or I can say at the same place. So SAP came up with a alternate option of segregating or separating out the business logic and the UI designing. Okay, for that what we have is a metadata extension. Okay, what we can have over here is I can create over here something called metadata extension that you can see over here. I'll just say go next. I want to create a metadata extension. So I can say ZBM22 EDML. I can say metadata extension. Just go next again, and you are saying annotate a view. Just a finish. Here you would be finding a way or a capability with the help of which you would be able to provide the annotation. Annotate view, it means you are ultimately annotation, providing the annotation for the view that would help you do the UI designing. How you want to annotate the view? So I can say give the name of the view that you want to provide the annotations for. I can say this particular view I want to provide the annotations for. And here you have to provide the element list. Before that, there is one more thing called metadata layer. Okay. Now let's just visualize that SAP has provided some standard application. You are working on some sort of customizing. Now you are working in a service-based company, and you are providing service to your actual client. Okay. So what SAP would become is a core. So they are the core developer of the application. The customer of the ultimate customer of the application would be the actual end user, actual end company, the product based company which is using that. And as you are working in a service based company providing SAP services to another company, you would become the partner. Okay. So likewise, we can have multiple layers of metadata. So there can be more than one metadata extension files. When it comes to priority, core would be the list on the priority, because SAP has given something, but your client wants the customization. So definitely he would take that, right? So core would be on the list priority, and the customer would be on the highest priority. Partner would be somewhere in the middle, and this ultimately would become the industry and the localization level as well. So we would say I am working as a partner. I am providing the service-based services to my client as a service-based industry. So whenever I am defining, I would say I am defining a metadata at the partner level. That becomes a layer. So if I do have two layers, or I can say two metadata extension file, the one which would be considered would be with the highest priority. Customer would be on the highest side, core would be on the lowest side. Now, after having this, per element by element, field by field, I would be providing my annotations over here. So I would be removing all the association, I would be removing all the annotation that we actually provided separately. And one more thing that you see, that all the element name has a semicolon. Like here we do have a comma, here after all the fields we do have a semicolon. I'll just copy and paste it over here. Here you have to first replace all the, you have to replace all the comma with semicolon. First thing. Second thing is, wherever the technical information of a business logic level is there, you have to remove that. So of course, key and non-key parameter, that is something which is not of interest when it comes to a UI design. So I'll just remove that as well. Third thing is all the fields which are not having any sort of annotation are not required. So you would find that I can remove this field. I can remove this field because I have not provided any annotation on top of that. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. Next thing is, after having all this, we have to learn what all things I can provide in a separate metadata layer and what things I cannot. So UI annotation library are permitted because that comes as a part of a UI designing. Consumption libraries are also permitted, but the object model library is dual. It can also be used in a business logic writing like we did over here, and it can also be used for a value help suggestion. That is why the object model library cannot be used in a metadata extension file. Consumption libraries can be. Sorry, there used to be a comma. Now, if you see, even after doing all this, we are getting an error. If you see, it is saying that the parent view which you are trying to extend with a metadata, it is not saying itself that metadata.allow extension. This annotation is missing. So your parent view should give the permission for creating a separate metadata file. So what we will be doing over here is, we would be saying @metadata.allow extension equal to true. Any sort of header based UI annotation also we can use in a metadata extension file. Third thing, once we have provided any annotation over here, we can remove those from the backend logic actual view that we created, because ultimately now that is being taken care at the actual view level, that is being taken care at the metadata extension level. I'll just say save, activate this. Go over here, say save, activate this as well. Okay, and try rerunning the application. It should give you the same behavior because we still have the separate view for that, for the annotation. But the only thing is the UI logic is now separated out from that of the backend. Here you would also find some sort of spiral icon which says your metadata has been extended with a view and this is the extension view. So likewise, we can have more than one metadata extension file as well. So if you see, we are still having the same design that we did earlier, right? And the filtering as well. So we should have the value helps also with that we added. Now, one more thing is, let's just say after designing all this stuff, what we also want to give my user is some sort of mechanism of performing a global search. Okay. So in a normal SAP application, we know that a user would always have to filter company code if you want to filter on company code, because we have to write a where condition on that. But what would happen if my user would say, give me a global search as well, so I can filter, or I can say, or I can directly search on all the columns at a single go. For that, we have to make our view searchable. For that, we have to write @search searchable equal to true. Now, when you are saying search.searchable equal to true, you have to specify what all fields you want to be incorporated into this particular search. Okay. So for that, what we have over here is, for example, I am going over here and saying I want, let's just say, my purchase order number to be also searchable, that they can directly write the search, they can directly write the purchase order number in the global search and it should be searched. So I can say search dot default search element. So you can have n number of default search elements specified. For example, I also want the global search to work on company code, or I can say all the fields, those are visible. Now, when a user is searching, let's just think you are searching on some sort of e-commerce site. You are searching for a mobile, but while searching for a mobile, you mistype something. mobile, you didn't type that correctly. Or let's just say in database it is stored as M as a capital, OBILE as a small, and you just type M in a everything in a lowercase or everything in an uppercase. It means whatever you are trying to pass in the input is not matching with the database entry. Still, the user would expect that the search should work, right? Because he is not knowing your database entries, he is typing as nearby as he can. So for that, we have a fuzziness implementation. I can say that if you want your search not to be accurate, but the user should be permitted for making some sort of mistake, you have to provide fuzziness threshold. When I say fuzziness threshold, it says how much amount of user's input you want to match with the data. So for example, you want to say if the user's input is matching even till the 70%, then also give him in the output. So that is called 0.7. Okay. Same way, fuzziness threshold can vary from 0.1 to 1.0. 0.1 being the 10%, 1.0 being the 100%. So if someone says 1.0, it means if the user is not typing exact information, then you won't get that record in the output. If I say 0.1, then even 10% of the user's input is matching, then that particular record would also become part of my output. So for example, I want purchase order number to be fuzzily searched. This particular company code should be, let's just say, 90% of matching. The username should also be, let's just say, 70% of match. Okay, these are the things that I want to incorporate. I can say activate this. And I can also say activate this. Okay, so my view is now activated again. Now let me just say close this application and reopen it again. It's a bit of pain point, but yeah, let's just do that. So if you see, there is one more dialog for this search now start appearing on the UI. Did we touch the UI application at all? No, but the application is behaving with the metadata that we are specifying. Okay, where actually did we give the global search? So we provided global search on mostly everything, but for EBLN we said it should match, let's just say 70%. So if the user is typing that give me a record for, let's just say, something where 450000, there is an internal searching. So ultimately it is matching most of the stuff. For example, let's just say I want to search for DV01. So it would search for DV01. So ultimately it would try matching the component on all the columns. So when I say 45 all 0 something, then it would search for all with the zeros matching with the payment terms as well. Then it would find, okay, yeah, it is matching. So ideally global search enable you to do the global search on multiple component, but when you are specifying fuzziness, it would say, okay, even though DV01 is stored in a low uppercase over here, you are searching with lowercase, then also it would work. Okay. If I start searching with DV02, it won't work because I have given that company code should match exact at least 90%. So if I consider 25, 25, 25, then it is only matching 75%, right? I mean, that I'm not sure how the algorithm would be working in the background, but that's what we can expect. So yeah, this is how here if you, yeah, so it is searching for this column as well. So likewise, we can expect this global search also to work, and this everything on the UI application is now being done from the backend side via CDS annotation. So this is how you can see how versatile the CDS view is. Okay, we just started and it just built an application from nowhere to this particular stage. So if you see, if we spend more time onto that, where actually we can reach by just writing the CDS annotation. Okay, so what we just learn is how a DML functionality can work with the integration of CDS VOPF. Metadata extension, we learn how I can separate out business value, business logic, as well as the UI designing part. Value help, we learn how I can integrate the model value help and foreign key association based value help. We would be creating our own model value help as well in some time today itself. And now we would be starting with the virtual data model. Before that, are we all clear of what we did till now? Or in case of any question, maybe we can discuss.
You can continue. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, so it's 12:38. Let's just have 5 minutes of quick bio break, and then we'll just gather back and continue, and we'll be going with the virtual data model. It's 12:38 or 9. Let's just gather back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, are we all here?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's just resume the session and try learning a very important thing, which is very much uh, required these days into discussion, and the approach that we should be following, the right set of approach. So all we learned till now was a kind of a basics of CDS. We know what all components are there, how I can use that. So I have all my weapons ready. Now, when it comes to a actual project development, okay, then at that particular point in time, there are certain methodologies. There are certain methods that we should be following. There are certain conventions that we should be following. And there are also reasons behind that, why we should be doing that. Now, for an instance, what we are talking about all this while is called a VDM. What is a VDM? VDM, as the name suggests, it is a virtual data model. So let's just break this down into multiple components. So what it is a data model, but it is a virtual one. Okay. It is a data model, but it is a virtual one. So it is virtually modeling your set of data providers. So we are modeling a data provider in a way virtually that wherever we are providing the data can easily accommodate or identify that what would be the purpose of this set of data that we are providing, or we can say what would be the purpose of inbuilt database artifact that we are designing. For example, when I say I am designing a view, I am designing a CDS view, and my purpose of this designing this CDS view is for I can say fetching some sort of master data from my supplier table because I want to provide a value help. Okay, so I'm building a view from a master data table. I'm building a view from a master data table. My purpose is to provide this particular view in a value help. So what ideally would become the purpose of this view? Would it be the actual full application? No, it won't be the actual full application. It is just providing some sort of interface. It is just providing some sort of interface to the application. If my whole application is something which we can visualize now over here, and if my one of the view which is referring to my master data table is helping me out over here for providing the value help, it is providing an interface for my whole application to that master data table. Okay, it means there can be a view which I can use. Okay, there can be one view, one end view, or I can say there can be one endpoint which we can use, or I can say which a UI developer, or I can say there would be an endpoint which a UI developer can use for actual application development, or there can be a view which we can decide to expose to the world outside. When you think of a class, right? When you think of a class, you would know that a class would have multiple visibility area. When I say a private, public, protected, everyone would only keep the things public which they actually want to be used as some sort of utility, some sort of global consumption events, consumption blocks, right? But when it comes to its internal variables, the global variables and something which are only being used at a class level, if there are certain methods which are only used internally that should not be invoked outside of the world, we go with ideally class encapsulation, right? And the purpose of this is to hide the information from the world outside which actually they are not required to know. We are just exposing the information to the world outside which actually is of their interest. Same with the application development. So when a application is getting developed, it is connecting to a OData service. So we now know how I can generate a OData service. Now, in a single OData service can have multiple entities. The question would be what all entities I should actually expose and what amount of information I should be exposing. Okay, that particular design that we have to actually decide upon. When I am having this particular need of PO data set, so I can also decide to only expose this particular PO data set. Other things I am not required to expose. And that once I have exposed that particular OData services, that entity, my UI developer can work on that and generate a UI application out of that. So that final OData service which I am generating, that I would be generating from a CDS view, and that final CDS view is called consumption view. Why it is called consumption view? Because that particular view would be used for consuming in a UI applications development. That would become our point number 2. Now, for us to reach at this consumption view level, which is my final set of output data, I can have a set of header information. Okay, I can have a set of header information, for example, a EKKO purchase order table. I can have some sort of line item information. I can have some sort of schedule line level information. I can have some sort of master data, everything. So I can expect that for individual master data, I would have a separate view. That view would be ultimately be used for passing this information again whenever required by the consumption view. So we are providing an interface in between. So it is called a interface views. Okay, an interface view which is built on top of a direct database table, be it a master table or a text table or something. Okay, is again segregated and called a basic view. So a basic view is something which is mostly in most of the scenario connecting directly to the table and directly getting the data from there and preparing it in a format that actually would be usable to the actual consumption view. So it is getting the data from the table and transforming it in a way that actually would be helpful. N, there can be n number of such basic view. Okay, and based on the business data they are carrying, business data they are representing, we can combine multiple such basic view, or we can say we can combine such a table and along with a basic views, and that would ultimately build my composite view. Okay, so the application that would be built always would be on top of a consumption view, and to build the consumption view, what would help us over here is certain interface views, and we can decide if I want to connect to directly certain tables, certain master data text tables, I can go with a basic views, and those particular all the views by connecting the transactional data, master data, both set of mixed data, I can create a composite view out of that, and that composite view would ultimately be used in a consumption view, and we would be exposing this particular consumption view as an OData service. Okay, and this particular OData service would finally be used in a applications development. So now you see, when someone is visualizing your flow diagram or your architectural diagram, they would be able to see, okay, the consumption view that you created is something which is application specific. But when it comes to a basic view, which is built on a top of a master data or a text table, or for some sort of transactional table as well, this would become very reusable. For example, if I say I want to give a value help for a company code, I want to validate a set of data for a vendor, right? Those all intermediate information would become reusable. So this basic view are reusable and can be used in multiple applications. Composite view is ultimately a layer just above the consumption layer, but the most reusable views are the basic views. Okay. Now, in the system, when you just look into that, definitely there are list of annotation that you would be able to see, and based on that you would be identifying whether this is a basic view or a composite view or a consumption view. But when you are searching for something just by looking at its name, we can also figure out whether it's an interface view or a consumption view. SAP ideally follows a naming convention called I underscore something. This I is for interface view. An interface view can be a basic or a composite. So it always follow I underscore for all the interface view and C underscore something for all the consumption view. Those would actually be used for applications development. Okay, if you just directly go into the system, and as we learn in the very first day of CDS, how I can figure out existing CDS view which are there into the system. From the TADIR, I can pass DDLS, and here if you pass the name I underscore star, you would get all the interface views built created by SAP if you see. Okay, the same way if you just say C, it would be list down all the consumption view. So these are giving an application for a banking data maintenance and assets maintenance and everything. Okay, so that is how a convention is also followed strictly, that anyone would be able to easily figure out what is the purpose of this view. Now, as it is I and C, definitely we as a developer won't be having the access to those namespaces. What we can develop something is in Z or Y namespace. So that would be the final decision at your organization level, that whoever is designing the technical development guidelines, that what should be the naming convention. In most of the project, you would find that they are following either a Z and we can say a process area, for example, a MMPP or anything. Then they are following whether it's an interface view or a consumption view. Then again, we are giving some sort of a short text. This is what all the organization are mostly following, depending on what is the technical guidelines saying. But by looking at this as well, we would be able to figure out whether it's an interface view or a consumption view. This becomes from a top level perspective, how the view's name should be looking alike, and how the data should be grouped. When it comes to a UI application development, okay. So for example, when it comes to a UI application development, I am providing my service to a developer. I am providing my service to a developer and he is using that, for example. Okay, and he is seeing the metadata. What my user, what he would be able to figure out from the technical names of this. So if you see, where is the, one second, this is my address type, not this is not the one, company code. Here if you see, the name says it is EBLN, BUKRS and everything. So what my developer would be able to figure out by looking at this, forget about the developer, let's just say many SAP standard application are always customizable. They, for example, maintain email template. Okay, what they are giving us to the functional person is that they can map any sort of field they want, okay, and generate a template dynamically, which might expose the purchase order number and everything. Now, by looking at the technical name, they also won't be able to easily figure out what is the information. Instead, if we give the name of the field a bit of a non-technical, saying rather than EBLN, if we start giving an alias saying purchasing document without a space, definitely because it's a technical name, then it would be easy for a developer to also figure out what is the and a particular person also to figure out what is the purpose of that field. For example, we consume some standard views also over here. If you see, the label is this, but what is the name of the technical field? It is also fiscal year variant. It is a bit of a non-technical version which ultimately SAP is using. So that should be how the naming convention of a view would should look alike. Okay. Now let's just try designing this whole VDM model for our one of the application, for example. So for example, I am going into this data definition over here, and here I am saying I want to get some sort of PO's information in a dashboard. Okay. So what I'll be doing over here is I am generating a, view. Okay. So when I start with an application development, where I will actually start with, I will start with an interface view, because for me to have a consumption view generated, I would need an interface view, because those would be the I can say gates which would provide me the access to the actual data. So I would say, let's just say ZBM double two. We are using I for interface view, and I can say PO docs. You can say purchasing basic view we are defining. And here we are defining a view. Over here, I can copy the name of this particular view, paste it over here, and just say SQL view. And this particular view, we would enable to connect to the database table directly. Okay. For example, I want it to get connected to the transactional table. Well, for example, EKKO. And I want a set of information to be selected for EBLN, BUKRS, BSART, BSTYP, year name, for example, AE data. Now this column that we are specifying, we would give it a bit of a non-technical name, saying as purchasing document, as company code, as I can say purchasing document type, as purchasing document category, as I can say created by, and I can say created at. Okay, so I just provided it a non-technical name. So in a service metadata, this is something I can expect to get reflected. Now we are talking of a VDM, right? And we want to make this view a basic view. Naming convention is something that we followed, but other than that, we also have to give a VDM annotation which says what is the kind of this view. I can say a view type, which is nothing but a basic view. So this becomes my basic view. Okay. Now, on top of that, like when I define a table, I define a technical settings also on top of that. The technical setting is being taken care in this views by object model. What we ideally specify in a technical setting, that what is a data class, whether it's a transactional, master data, what sort of data does it contain. Okay, so we would say usage type, and here in the usage type we are specifying data class, and it would say whether it's a transactional data, master data, organizational data, what sort of information it is. So I'll just say it is a transactional data. We also learn size category, how many records can be there, like a size category which we also specified in technical settings. So I can say size category says there can be, let's just say purchase order, so there can be in records in millions. Same way I can say service quality. So when it comes to a service quality, we are specifying how many tables are actually combined to generate this view. So if view does not contain more than 3 tables, then we can say service quality A. If it contains less than 5, then it's B, less than 15 is C, less than 100 is D. Okay, so I can have a view which has all this number of views combined into that. If a view is being used for data extraction from HANA, okay, so in that case it is defined as a X. And certain view does not, which are not used for any sort of application logic processing, but they are used for some sort of reusing purpose, then it is called as P. So this is something which are two are very rarely used. Mainly you would find something based on the number of tables being used, A, B, C, D. So in our case, it is only one table that we are consuming. So I can say A. Then we would also be defining what is the right set of information that this view is presenting, called as a representation key. What is this set of information being presented by this view? It is the purchasing document. So it is the purchasing document, this information which my view is presenting. If there is more than one parameter that you want to specify, you can also say in a square bracket. Very much possible. Okay, and you would just say activate this. So this become my first basic view, called an interface view as well. Now, this basic or interface view is containing data which is a transactional set of data. Now, I want few more information also to get added to this, like some sort of company code information, some sort of suppliers information and everything. So for that, we would be generating one composite view. I'll just again say data definition. But a composite view is also nothing but an interface view, right? So I can say I over here, and I can say PON supplier data. We can let's just say connect. Or I can say it is a composite view we are creating. And we are defining a view over here. Now, what would be the name of SQL view? That is something we can also specify over here. Now, what would be the data source for us? So we already have one data source, one basic view that we created. That is something that we would be using. And for all of this particular purchase order, we also want the information of company code. So let's just say I want to give an association that one particular purchase order can have definitely one minimum to maximum company code. You can combine, let's just say T001 as, and we can give it as a name of an association called company code. On for giving an on, we would need projection, and for that, let's just say control space and insert all the elements that we just got. So I can say $projection. So these are all the fields getting listed from the base view that we just created. Company code equal to underscore company code dot ViewKRS. Now let's just say I also want a supplier's information. I can say for one particular purchase order, there would always be one supplier again, LFA1, as I can say suppliers. And here I can say, okay, I don't have a supplier mentioned over here. We have to extend this view in that case then. And it would get the listener from supplier. And we can expose this information that we just created because we want also this information to be passed on the next level. So what we just did over here is expose the association. That is something we learned in the earlier session. So the concept that we learn would still stay the same, only the convention we are improvising upon. So we are providing a smaller name because we are asked for. So let's just say, okay. Now we have activated this. Now we have to define that this is a composite view and what sort of data does it contain. What do we have for that? A VDM annotation. Here we would say view type. And here we would say it is a composite view. Object model we would specify, and that object model we would specify that we do have a usage type and the data that it is containing. Now it contains the transactional set of data, master data as well. So it contains a mixed data. How many record I can expect it to contain? So as the base table is again the purchase order header, I can expect that it can again go till millions. Okay. And what is the service quality? So there is a base table 1, company code 2, LFA13. So again, it is containing around less than 5 tables. So I can say LF its service quality is A. And what would be the right representation of the data that we are having over here? Called representation key. It would be nothing but my purchasing document. So that is something that we just decided over here, and we created a composite view. Now this composite view would be used again, and we would be creating the final view called a consumption view, and that consumption view is something that anyone can use for the UI applications development perspective. Let me just close this because it's running from so long. Now let's just design a consumption view. I can say data definition over here. And when I say I'm designing a consumption view, what would be the naming convention? It would be C over here, and let's just say PO data. I can say PO data, a consumption view. I'll just go next, and we would be defining a view. Now, what would be, okay, let's just give the name to SQL view a name as well. What would be the data source for us? So data source for a consumption view can be one or more composite views, or a basic view can also participate over here. But as we already have consumed all the information in a composite, we can directly use this. And let's just use all the information that is already being exposed. So we have all the informations. Those are being exposed by my base view. I just say control space and everything got inserted. Okay. Now let's just define the header parameter also over here. It says VDM. Which is nothing but a consumption. And again specify object model annotation which specify the basic information. Usage type, data class, again it's a mixed one. And what is the right set of representation we can think of? It is again purchasing document. Okay. So we just build this particular view that we can expect to be used for a applications generation. And for any person to generate an application on top of a view, what we need? We need a OData service to be generated from this particular view. So we can write our OData publish finally over here, and we can expect a OData service to get generated out of that. Now, how I can generate an OData service, register that, and then use that, that is something that you already all are master in. So that is something that we of course won't be going in. But now let's just say when we were going with this, we also mentioned that a model value help. Foreign key association is something that we know that we can pass the name of association. So there is nothing special. When I say model value help, what ideally would happen is, let's just say I do have a table which is containing 100 set of information, 100 columns, but my user is saying only show me the information of a name, a code, and I guess let's just say country or something when it comes to let's just say supplier. Then in that case we are creating a separate view. That view would nothing but a it would be nothing but an interface view, because that view is connecting directly to the database table first. Second, it is being used for helping out with the value help to the actual consumption view. Okay, and that is why when we would say that we want a separate view for consumption, or I can say for a generation of a model value help, we can again build a basic view. Okay, and that basic views would be used for the value help. Okay, so what we can say over here is, if I want to build okay, where we are. Okay, for example, for this supplier, I want my own value help. I can again build a basic view for that. I can say I can go in the data definition, and here I can say I want an interface view. Purpose of this is for the supplier value help. So this would build a view, and this particular view we can use for building a supplier's value help. I can give the SQL view name to it. Okay. And SQL view name, and the data source for this I can consider it as an original one. But if I had used the original table like object model foreign key association, it would give all 100 columns. But my user is saying, don't give me all 100 columns. I am just interested in the supplier code, the name of the supplier, and the country of that. These are the only thing he is interested in. Okay. Now, what we just build over here is again a basic view. And the kind of data it is containing, that we can specify in a data category where we can write value help. So the purpose of this view would be for generation of a value help, and which would only expose these three information. Okay, so this is again an interface view, but this can now be used in all other composite view where actually I need a supplier's value help. I do not need to build this again and again for all of my application. Okay, so it's a totally reusable one. I do not need to create it again and again for wherever I want. Okay, so now I can say I want to use this view instead of the LFA one. So if I just replace this table this with a view where the suppliers is there, and here I can expect a relevant supplier code to come, and it would be it. Now, after activating this, if you want to say that I want to build a model value help on top of that, and on the consumption view, if you just define that give me a value help on a particular supplier number, then that is of course doable. You can say consumption dot value help definition over here. You would be defining an entity, and again within the entity you would give the name and element, and in the name you would give the name of this, and in the element you would give the element of this value help that we would be passing in the filter. Okay, so this is again consumption based value help, or I can say modeled value help that you can generate. Or in case you are more comfortable in using the object model foreign key association, then you can also say object model foreign key association. And here you can pass that I want a supplier's value help. So you can choose the supplier's association, and that would ultimately propose a value help for that. Right. So it's the same thing, just being done in a different way. But this particular architecture will give us many a reusable components. So in upcoming application, we do not need to do so much of development for all the reusable component. Secondly, we know exactly which particular component is something that is being used for the actual applications development. Convention of this would also help in the service metadata for a UI developer to build the application, and for a functional consultant if we want to configure something. Right. So this would make the life of multiple people easier. For us as a developer also, we would be able to figure out by looking at the naming convention, what is the purpose of this view. Okay. Does it make sense? Is it clear to everyone, or any questions? I hope you all are here.
Yes.
Okay.
We need
Yeah,
to go through in
I understand it's pretty much too many things.
yeah.
And definitely it would build the confidence only by doing the hands-on. So yeah, maybe you have to try it on for sure. Okay. So yes, I guess this is all we had, and we would be again meeting on the upcoming session in the upcoming week. And we have few many exciting things still on our plate, so we would be learning all those. Okay, then see you all. Have a nice remaining weekend, and see you in the next session.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.